What if I told you that the very lifestyle millions are chasing is the same lifestyle that is quietly stealing their happiness? We scroll through social media and see perfect homes, luxury cars, exotic vacations. And something inside whispers, if only I had that, I'd finally be content. But here's the secret no one tells you. Many of those people, living in their mansions, are still empty. Surrounded by abundance, yet starving for peace. We live in an age of endless consumption. The latest phone, the newest fashion, the most expensive brands. A young man feels ashamed because he wears last year's sneakers. A young woman feels pressured because her wedding doesn't look like the Instagram reels she saved. Families drown in debt to keep up with an image. But let me ask you, when did our worth become defined by the label on our clothes, instead of the values in our hearts? Islam offered us the opposite path. A path of simplicity. A path where peace is not bought, but lived. Let's open the first door. The Prophet Muhammad lived in a room so small that when he stood for prayer, his wife had to move aside. He often slept on a mat that left marks on his back. And yet, he was the happiest of men, the leader of nations, the beloved of Allah. His life teaches us this. Peace is not in possessions. Peace is in purpose. Now, imagine this in today's world. A man who owns nothing more than enough food for the day, but sleeps with a calm heart because he owes no one, envies no one, fears no one. Compare him to the man in a mansion, tossing and turning at night, worried about loans, afraid of losing status, desperate for more. Who is richer? Who is truly free? Let's open the second door. Chasing the Western lifestyle is like running on a treadmill. No matter how hard you run, you stay in the same place. There's always a new trend. Always a new product. Always a new standard. You never arrive. And that's the point. Consumer culture is designed to keep you hungry, never satisfied. But Islam frees you from this trap with one powerful principle. Contentment. *Kanara. The Prophet said, richness is not having many possessions, but richness is being content with the soul. That is the wealth no market can sell. Now the third door. When we run behind the Western lifestyle, we begin to lose ourselves. Our family bonds weaken. Our prayer times shrink. Our hearts become restless. We are so busy chasing more that we forget who we are. But when we embrace simplicity, suddenly space opens up. Time for loved ones. Time for reflection. Time for Allah. Simplicity is not deprivation. It is liberation. Think of your phone. If you install too many apps, it slows down, overheats, and eventually crashes. That's what happens to us when we overload our lives with unnecessary desires. Simplicity is like deleting the apps you don't need. It makes life run smoother. So what is the way forward? It's not about rejecting the world completely. Islam doesn't tell us to abandon work, wealth, or comfort. It tells us to use them wisely, without letting them own us. Buy what you need. Earn with honesty. Enjoy blessings with gratitude. But never measure your worth by what you possess. Measure it by who you are when no one is watching. My friends, let me leave you with this. The Western lifestyle promises happiness but often delivers emptiness. Islam promises simplicity, and through it, delivers true peace. So the choice is yours. Do you want to look rich for a moment, or feel rich forever? And remember this as you walk out. You are not ordinary consumers. You are carriers of a timeless truth. You are not defined by trends. You are defined by faith. And that makes you richer than the world itself. Because real wealth is not in what you own. Real wealth is in who you are. ## 6 key takeaways * Western consumer culture creates endless desire but little true happiness. * The Prophet lived simply. Proving peace comes from purpose, not possessions. * Chasing trends is like running on a treadmill. You never arrive. * Islam teaches *Kanara*, contentment, as true richness of the soul. * Simplicity creates space for family, reflection, and connection with Allah. * Real wealth is not in what you own, but in who you are and how you live. We live in a time when the world convinces us that the more we own, the more valuable we are. Advertisements scream at us from billboards, our phones glow with targeted ads, influencers parade their lifestyles before us as if joy can be purchased in a shopping cart. And yet, with every swipe, every like, every glance at someone else's perfect life, our hearts grow a little heavier. It is as though we are standing before a table of endless dishes, tasting one after another, but never feeling full. That is the reality of endless consumption. It feeds the eyes but starves the soul. Think of a young man scrolling late into the night. He sees his friends posting pictures in brand new clothes, traveling abroad, dining at expensive restaurants. Suddenly, the shoes he bought last year feel old, his phone feels outdated, his life feels insufficient. He doesn't see that those friends might be drowning in credit card debt or borrowing money just to post an image of wealth. All he feels is that his life is lacking. And so he chases, not because he needs, but because he fears being left behind. Isn't it strange that in this race, no one really wins? A young woman once described how planning her wedding turned into a nightmare. She began with a simple dream, but then she opened Instagram. Suddenly, her vision wasn't enough. She saw brides arriving in helicopters, wearing dresses worth thousands, staging photo shoots in palaces. Her family took loans to keep up with the standard, and the joy of her wedding turned into the burden of debt. Months later, she confessed, "I don't even remember my wedding clearly. I only remember the pressure." This is the silent theft of consumer culture. It steals the very happiness it promises. But look closer. Ask yourself, when did we start believing that a brand stitched onto fabric could add value to our hearts? When did we start measuring our dignity by the logo on our shoes instead of the character in our souls? There was a time when people were proud of their honesty, their hard work, their patience. Now, pride is in the latest phone upgrade. Isn't it tragic that we spend hours choosing filters for our photos, but so little time polishing the filter of our intentions? Islam's wisdom cuts through this illusion. The Quran reminds us, know that the life of this world is but amusement and diversion and adornment and boasting to one another and competition in increase of wealth and children. 57:20. The verse doesn't say wealth is forbidden. It says the race, the showing off, the endless comparison, that is the trap. And yet, many of us live as though the verse was never revealed. We collect, we compare, we compete. And in the process, we lose the one thing that money cannot buy, peace. Think of the prophet, who had every opportunity to live like a king but chose simplicity. His meals were often dates and water. His home was small. His belongings could be counted on 2 hands. And yet, he smiled more than anyone. People were drawn to his presence not because of what he wore, but because of the light he carried. Isn't it strange? He owned so little, yet he gave the world so much. Now imagine 2 men. One lives in a luxurious mansion, but his nights are restless. He owes banks, he fears losing status, he wakes up tired despite his silk sheets. The other lives in a modest home, but he wakes at dawn with no debts, no envy, no show to maintain. He eats simple food, but he eats it with gratitude. He sleeps little, but his heart is light. Who is richer? Who is freer? We all know the answer, but few of us have the courage to choose it. Endless consumption is like salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. You keep chasing, hoping the next purchase will finally quench you. But it never does. And slowly, without realizing it, you are drained. Simplicity, on the other hand, is like pure spring water. It may look small, it may not sparkle like luxury, but it satisfies. It refreshes. It restores. That is why Islam calls us back to simplicity, not to deprive us, but to heal us. Chasing the Western lifestyle is like running on a treadmill. You move, you sweat, you push harder and harder, but the truth is, you never arrive anywhere. There's always a new season, a new gadget, a new style. And just when you think you've caught up, the finish line is pulled further away. That is the secret design of consumer culture. It thrives on your dissatisfaction, it feeds on your longing, it convinces you that you are never enough. Think about the release of a new smartphone. Crowds line up overnight, camping on sidewalks, desperate to be the first to hold the newest device. The moment they buy it, they post pictures, feel proud, and believe for a brief second that they've arrived. But months later, another version comes out, shinier, faster, slightly upgraded. Suddenly, the once precious phone feels old. What changed? The phone still works. It still makes calls. It still takes pictures. What changed is the illusion. And so the cycle repeats, year after year, keeping people running on that treadmill of desire. I once met a young man who confessed that he had spent nearly all his savings just to buy branded shoes because he felt embarrassed wearing anything less. But when he walked into a gathering, no one even noticed his shoes. They were busy with their own lives, their own worries. He told me later, I realized I was suffering just to impress people who weren't even looking. Isn't that the cruel irony? We run so hard for approval that often never comes. The Prophet Muhammad warned us about this endless chase when he said, if the son of Adam had a valley of gold, he would want 2 valleys, and nothing fills the son of Adam except dust. That hadith is like a mirror. It reflects the truth of human greed. No matter what we achieve, we crave more. And the Western lifestyle has turned that craving into an entire industry. The economy depends on us never being satisfied. Because if we were content, markets would collapse. But Islam teaches us something revolutionary. You do not need to chase endlessly. You can step off the treadmill. You can rest. You can breathe. Imagine someone constantly running after the wind. No matter how fast they go, the wind slips through their fingers. That's what it's like chasing trends. They shift before you can catch them. But qana'a, contentment, is like sitting beneath a tree, letting the breeze come to you, enjoying it without trying to own it. It's still the same wind, but the experience is entirely different. One leaves you exhausted, the other leaves you at peace. Look at the lives of people who are always chasing the next big thing. Their closets are full, but their hearts are empty. Their homes shine with luxury, but arguments echo through the walls. They post smiling pictures, but behind the screen, they are restless. Contrast that with a family who eat simple food together on the floor, sharing laughter, sharing gratitude. They may not own much, but their home radiates warmth. That warmth is not for sale in any marketplace. When you live by trends, you are always late. By the time you buy what's in, it's already on its way out. And so you spend your life reacting, not living. But when you live by faith, you set your own standard. Your worth comes from your Creator, not from your possessions. Your measure is eternal, not seasonal. I often think of the story of a wealthy man who once visited a fisherman. He saw the fisherman sitting by the sea, relaxing with his family. The wealthy man asked, "Why don't you go fish more, earn more, buy more boats, and build a business?" The fisherman replied, "And what would I do then?" The man said, "Then you could retire, relax, and spend time with your family." The fisherman smiled and said, "But that's exactly what I'm doing now." This is the wisdom of contentment. It skips the endless chase and brings you directly to peace. So ask yourself, are you on the treadmill, running endlessly, or have you stepped off to live with purpose? Because here is the truth. Trends will fade, but your soul will not. Fashion will change, but your values can stay. Markets will rise and fall, but the peace of qana'a remains steady. And the moment you choose contentment over comparison, you will realize something incredible. You were never behind. You were always enough. When we run behind the Western lifestyle, we often don't realize what we are leaving behind. It begins quietly, almost unnoticed. A delayed prayer here, a rushed conversation with our parents there, a family dinner skipped because we are too busy. At first, it feels harmless. We tell ourselves, "I'll make up for it later. I just need to focus right now." But slowly, the rhythm of our lives shifts. The heart that once found rest in prayer now beats faster chasing deadlines. The home that once echoed with laughter now feels like a hotel, where people come and go but never truly connect. And before we know it, we have lost not only time but also ourselves. Picture a young professional. He works long hours, striving to buy the latest car, the newest phone, the bigger house. He tells himself he's doing it for his family, but his family barely sees him. His children grow up watching him leave early and return late. His wife feels more like a roommate than a partner. The house is filled with things, but empty of warmth. And when he finally buys that car, that phone, that house, he sits inside them feeling strangely hollow. Why? Because the very people he thought he was working for have drifted away. This is what happens when we run so hard after the world. We often drop what truly matters on the way. The Prophet once said, "Verily, wealth is sweet and lush. Whoever takes it without greed, it will be blessed for him. But whoever takes it with greed, it will not be blessed for him." That is the difference between seeking with balance and chasing without purpose. Wealth in itself is not evil. Comfort in itself is not wrong. But when greed becomes the driver, blessings fade. And blessings are not measured by numbers. They are measured by the peace and love that numbers cannot buy. Think of your life like a phone. When you overload it with apps, photos, and notifications, it begins to slow down. It overheats, lags, and sometimes crashes. The same happens to the soul. When we overload it with desires, endless comparisons, and shallow goals, we lose clarity. We forget why we exist. We begin to live as machines, not humans. Simplicity, on the other hand, is like deleting the apps you don't need. Suddenly, the phone works faster, smoother, better. Suddenly, your soul remembers how to breathe. I once met an elderly man who lived in a small, modest house. He had few possessions, yet his eyes shone with peace. He told me, "My children come every evening. We eat together. We laugh. We pray. I don't have much, but I have everything I need." Now compare that to countless wealthy homes where silence dominates, each family member locked in their own room, connected to screens but disconnected from one another. Which home would you rather live in? When you run behind the Western lifestyle, your schedule fills but your heart empties. You have less time for reflection, less time for relationships, less time for Allah. You may achieve success by the world's definition, but lose success by Allah's definition. And in the end, whose definition truly matters? Sometimes, I think of it like a race where the prize keeps moving. You run faster, pushing yourself to the limit, but the finish line shifts further ahead. You collapse, exhausted, and realize the prize you were chasing was never even worth it. But imagine instead running toward a finish line that is steady, clear, and eternal, the pleasure of Allah. Every step brings you closer. Every effort is noticed. Every sacrifice is rewarded. That is the difference between chasing the world and living for the hereafter. One leaves you lost, the other leaves you found. So let me ask you, what will people say about you when you're gone? That you owned the best brands? That you had the newest gadgets? Or that you left behind love, kindness, and faith? Because when the dust settles, no one will remember your shoes, but they will remember your smile. No one will recall the size of your home, but they will recall the warmth inside it. No one will care about your phone model, but they will care about the words you spoke and the prayers you left behind. The danger of chasing the Western lifestyle is not only losing money or wasting time. The greatest danger is losing yourself, your identity, your soul. And once lost, those things are harder to recover than any material possession. That is why simplicity in Islam is not a restriction. It is a lifeline. It pulls you back from drowning in excess, it anchors you when the world tries to sweep you away, and it reminds you of who you truly are, a servant of Allah, not a servant of trends. There is a reason why chasing trends feels like running in circles. No matter how much you buy, no matter how much you collect, it never feels like enough. You tell yourself, if I just get this one more thing, I'll finally be satisfied. But the moment you have it, another desire creeps in. The hunger returns. And so you keep running, convinced that the next purchase, the next trip, the next upgrade will fill the emptiness. But it never does. That is why the Prophet gave us the key when he said, "Richness is not in having many possessions, but richness is in being content with the soul." This is the treasure of Qana'ah, contentment. The kind of wealth that no store can sell and no market can trade. I once met a man who owned very little. He lived in a small, modest home with his wife and children. His furniture was plain, his meals were simple, and his clothes were not new. But when you spoke to him, you felt something powerful, peace. He said, "I wake up every morning and thank Allah for breath in my lungs and food on my table. What more do I need?" He smiled easily, gave generously, and slept deeply. Compare him to people who own mansions but lie awake at night, worried about bills, loans, or losing status. Who is richer? Who is truly free? Qana'ah does not mean giving up ambition. It does not mean you cannot dream big, work hard, or enjoy blessings. It means knowing when to stop running. It means not tying your happiness to what is always out of reach. It means seeing what you already have as enough. And that changes everything. Imagine eating a simple meal of bread and soup. If you focus on what's missing, it feels poor. If you focus on the taste, the nourishment, the blessing that millions don't have, it feels like a feast. The food did not change. The heart did. The Quran warns us, rivalry in worldly increase distracts you until you visit the graves. 102:1-2. This verse is not just about money. It is about the endless comparisons that consume us. You see your neighbor buy a new car, and suddenly your car feels old. You see someone post a vacation online, and suddenly your life feels boring. But Kana protects you from this trap. It is like armor for the heart. With contentment, you can look at others without envy, celebrate their blessings without belittling your own, and live with gratitude instead of greed. I remember a young woman who once admitted that she used to spend hours scrolling through social media, feeling jealous of her friends' lifestyles. She said, "I had everything I needed, but I couldn't see it because I was too busy comparing." One Ramadan, she decided to delete her apps. She spent her nights in prayer, her days reading Quran, and her evenings with family. By the end of the month, she said, "For the first time, I felt rich, even though nothing in my life had changed." That is Kana, the shift that turns scarcity into abundance without adding a single possession. The Prophet himself lived this principle. He was offered mountains of gold, but he chose simplicity. Sometimes days would pass without a cooked meal in his house. He and his family often survived on dates and water. Yet his heart overflowed with gratitude, and his companions describe him as the most generous, the most content, the most at peace. His wealth was not in what he owned, it was in his relationship with Allah. And when your wealth is in Allah, it never runs out. Think of your life as a vessel. If it is filled with greed, no matter how much you pour in, it leaks through the cracks. But if it is sealed with contentment, even a little is enough to keep you full. This is why some of the poorest people smile more sincerely than the wealthy. This is why a child playing with a stick in a village often laughs louder than a child surrounded by toys in a mansion. Happiness is not a price tag. It is a perspective. So, the secret is not to stop working, not to stop dreaming, not to stop striving. The secret is to stop chasing. To know when to say, "Alhamdulillah, I have enough." Because when you can say that with sincerity, you are the richest person alive. And when you meet Allah with a heart content, you will realize you carried a treasure greater than all the gold of this world, the treasure of Kana. There is something magical that happens when life becomes simple. It's as if the noise quiets down, the weight lifts off your chest, and suddenly you notice things you had been blind to all along. The laughter of your child, the softness of your mother's hands, the call to prayer echoing in the distance. These are the treasures that often get drowned in the race for more, but simplicity creates the space for them to shine again. Think of a dining table. In some homes, the table is set with extravagant dishes, every corner filled with plates, every plate filled with food. It looks impressive, but people barely taste what they eat. Compare that to a simple meal: bread, dates, maybe a bowl of soup. People sit close, they talk, they listen, they laugh. Which table do you think leaves the heart fuller? The Quran reminds us, "Eat and drink, but waste not by extravagance. Indeed, he likes not the extravagant." 7:31. It is not the abundance of food that blesses a meal. It is the presence of love, gratitude, and remembrance of Allah. I once heard a story of a father who worked endless hours to give his children the best life. He bought them expensive toys, gadgets, branded clothes. Yet one day, his young son told him, "Baba, I don't want more toys. I just want you to play with me." That moment shattered him. He realized he was giving his children things, but not himself. Simplicity could have given him back the most valuable gift: time. Our Prophet embodied this balance. He never lived in luxury, but his home was filled with warmth. He sat with his companions, laughed with his wives, played with children in the street. His simplicity allowed him to be present. And isn't that what we crave most today? To be present. Not distracted. Not rushing. Not half there while our minds scroll somewhere else. When we simplify, we gain back time that was stolen by unnecessary pursuits. A person who chooses not to run after every new trend suddenly has evenings free to sit with their family. A young woman who stops comparing her life to what she sees online suddenly finds peace in her own blessings. A man who decides he doesn't need the latest gadget saves money, saves stress, and saves himself from endless debt. Simplicity doesn't take away, it gives back. It gives back room for reflection. Have you noticed how silence feels rare these days? We fill every moment with sound, music, podcasts, notifications buzzing. But in simplicity, silence becomes possible. And in silence, the heart speaks. You begin to hear your own thoughts, your conscience, your longing for Allah. The Prophet would retreat to the cave of Hira before revelation, sitting alone, reflecting, purifying his soul. It was in that simplicity that he received the greatest gift to humanity, the Quran. Perhaps our hearts too are waiting to receive clarity, but we are too crowded to notice. I remember meeting a woman who told me she had cut down on unnecessary shopping, cancelled many subscriptions, and simplified her home. She said, "For the first time in years, I can sit and read Quran without feeling rushed. I feel like I finally have time for Allah." Her words stayed with me because they revealed the secret. Simplicity is not just about having less, it is about making space for what matters more. Think of life like a suitcase. If you fill it with unnecessary items, there will be no space for what you truly need. You will struggle to carry it, weighed down by things that don't serve you. But if you pack lightly, only the essentials, suddenly the journey becomes easier. That is what simplicity does to life. It lightens your load so you can walk with purpose. And there is something else simplicity gives us: stronger connections with people. When families spend less time chasing things, they spend more time with one another. When friends are not trying to impress each other with wealth, they connect on deeper truths. When neighbors are not competing, they begin to care. Simplicity is like removing walls so that hearts can see each other again. So, the question is not whether you can afford a bigger house, a fancier car, or more luxury. The question is, do you have space for what actually matters? Do you have space for your family? For your soul? For Allah? Because in the end, simplicity is not about owning less, it's about living more. It is about reclaiming what the world has stolen from you: peace, presence, and purpose. And that is worth more than all the trends in the world combined. There comes a moment in every life when the glitter fades. When the car grows old, when the clothes lose their shine, when the phone you once bragged about becomes outdated in the eyes of the world. And in that moment, a question quietly surfaces: what do I truly have? The Western lifestyle tells us that wealth is measured by what sits in your bank account, by the size of your home, by the labels stitched onto your clothes. But Islam flips this measure upside down. It whispers a truth so powerful, yet so simple. Real wealth is not in what you own. Real wealth is in who you are. I once met a man who worked as a cleaner in a school. His income was small, his clothes were simple, and his shoes were worn from long days of walking. But every person who spoke about him mentioned his smile. Teachers would say, "He greets us with such warmth that he brightens the whole corridor." Students said, "He treats us with respect, like we matter." When he passed away, the school held a prayer gathering, and hundreds attended. Not because of what he owned, but because of who he was. That is wealth. Wealth that cannot be stolen, cannot be outdated, cannot be measured in currency. The Prophet Muhammad said, "Richness is not having many possessions, but richness is being content with the soul." This hadith is a mirror reflecting the emptiness of consumer culture. Because possessions are fragile. They can be lost in a fire, taken in a theft, wiped away in an economic collapse. But the wealth of character, of patience, of gratitude, no one can take that from you. Think of two homes. In the first, there are marble floors, chandeliers, and expensive furniture, but the family inside barely speaks to one another. Meals are eaten separately, screens replace conversations, and the silence is heavy. In the second home, the furniture is old, the meals are simple, but the laughter is loud, the love is strong, and the presence of Allah fills the air. Which home feels wealthier? Which home would you rather live in? Wealth is not in things, it is in the atmosphere of the heart. Real wealth also shows itself in how people face hardship. I recall a man who lost his business overnight due to an economic crisis. Stripped of income, he could have fallen into despair. Instead, he said, "Allah gave me the ability to work once, and He can give it to me again." He smiled, tightened his belt, and started small again. His neighbors admired his resilience. They said, "He lost everything but still has peace." That is the strength of a wealthy soul. It cannot be broken by the loss of possessions because its treasures are internal. On the other hand, I met a wealthy businessman who confessed that despite his success, he never slept peacefully. He said, "I am afraid of losing what I have. I look at people around me, not with gratitude, but with suspicion. Who wants to take what is mine? Who envies me? Who is plotting against me?" His heart was like a locked vault, filled with riches but empty of rest. He had money, but he had no wealth. Islam teaches us that the true currency of life is not gold or silver, but deeds. On the day of judgment, no one will ask about the brand of your clothes, but you will be asked about the kindness in your words. No one will count the number of cars you drove, but your prayers will be counted. No one will recall the square footage of your house, but the square footage of your grave will remind you of what really matters. That is why the Quran says, the wealth and children are, but adornment of the worldly life. But the enduring good deeds are better to your Lord for reward and better for one's hope. 1846. Imagine your life like a garden. If you spend all your time collecting decorations, fancy pots, shiny ornaments, colorful banners, but neglect to water the soil, the garden will eventually die. But if you focus on the roots, nurturing faith, patience, gratitude, then even if the garden looks simple, it will bloom beautifully. That is what it means to be truly wealthy, to nurture the roots of the soul, not the ornaments of the world. So ask yourself, when people think of you, will they remember your possessions or your presence? Will they recall your wealth or your warmth? Because in the end, your real treasure is not in what you leave in your bank account, but in the legacy you leave in people's hearts and the record you leave with Allah. And that kind of wealth, wealth of the soul, of character, of faith, is the only wealth that never loses value, in this life or the next. My dear brothers and sisters, the time has come to make a choice. A choice between a life that looks full but feels empty, and a life that may look simple but overflows with peace. A choice between chasing trends that fade tomorrow, and embracing values that last forever. A choice between being owned by possessions, or owning your purpose. Do not wait for another reminder. Do not wait for another year. Do not wait until it is too late. Because every day you chase the world takes a piece of you. But every day you choose simplicity, Allah returns to you a piece of peace. Remember this. Real happiness is not in what you buy. Real happiness is in what you believe. Real wealth is not in what you own. Real wealth is in who you are. So step away from the race. Step away from the treadmill. Step into a life of gratitude, presence, and purpose. And carry this truth with you. It is better to live simply and matter eternally than to live extravagantly and vanish like dust.